The dog appeared after the first frost, no collar, no sound. Just a shape yellow-black and still watching from the edge of the woods. Nora spotted him while chopping wood behind the cabin. At first, she thought he was a shadow, then he blinked and vanished. That was day 1. By day 3, he was closer. Sitting just beyond the tree line, never barking, never growling. Just waiting. Nora didn't approach. She had made peace with her isolation. People were noise, cities were grief. Out here, silence was the only thing she trusted. But the dog didn't leave. He was there in the mornings, at dusk. Even when snow began to fall, his outline remained a steady contrast against the whiteness. Nora told herself he would go. She didn't need company. She didn't want it. But on the 7th day, as she hauled firewood toward the porch, her foot caught on ice. And she fell, hard. Pain shot through her wrist. She cried out sharp, startled, real, and from the forest, the dog ran. He didn't hesitate. He didn't stop at the edge of the woods. He came straight to her, stood beside her. Close enough that she could feel his warmth. Close enough to lean on, and she did. Not because she trusted him, not because she wanted to, but because, in that moment, she couldn't stand alone. She looked into his eyes, deep amber, almost gold, and whispered through clenched teeth, "What are you?" He didn't answer, just sat. Still, solid, present, and in that stillness, Nora felt something she hadn't in a long time. Not safety, not comfort, but a recognition. Nora hadn't always lived in silence. Once, she'd had a voice that filled rooms. She used to teach literature at a high school, read poems aloud until students who never listened began to lean forward. She had friends, lovers, a life built on words. But after her mother's death, everything changed. The cancer came fast, took her dignity, her breath, her light, and Nora, who had been the one to stay, to care, to hold the hand that trembled in the end, was left with a house full of fading photographs and unsaid things. She had promised to scatter her mother's ashes in the mountains. But she couldn't. The urn sat unopened on the fireplace mantel. A silent weight in a room to still, so she moved, left the city, quit her job, took the old cabin her mother left behind, surrounded by pine and memory and snow. No phone, no internet, no people. She told herself this was healing. But healing doesn't feel like hollow. It doesn't echo when you speak. Now, months into her self-imposed exile, Nora lived on autopilot. Wake, chop wood, boil tea, sit by the fire, try to forget. But memory is loud, even in silence. She saw her mother in the tea leaves, heard her voice in wind slipping through the cracks in the window. Some days, Nora didn't speak at all, until the dog came, until Axel. She didn't name him at first, didn't want to, but she started thinking of him as Axel, after the dog from one of her mother's old books. A dog who didn't save the world, but saved one person from vanishing. And every time Nora whispered Axel under her breath, the dog would lift his head, as if remembering, as if saying, "Yes, that's me now." Axel never crossed the threshold. He would walk to the porch, lie at the steps, wait. Nora would open the door, glance at him, say nothing. He'd look up once, then rest his head on his paws. That became the pattern. Every morning, Nora brewed tea. Axel sat outside. They watched the fog roll through the trees together, but apart. By the second week, she started talking. Not to him, just near him. "It's colder today. You should find a better place to sleep. There's a storm coming." Axel never responded, but he never left. When the snow thickened, Nora placed an old wool blanket on the porch. The next morning, it was warm, flattened. He had accepted it, quietly. Without thanks, she left a bowl of broth one night. It was empty by dawn. Still, Axel never came inside. He kept his distance. Respected the boundary she didn't know how to lower. But his eyes, they always followed her. Not with hunger, not with fear, but with knowing. As if he saw the weight she carried. As if he knew about the ashes above the fireplace, the unopened letters in the drawer. The photo of her mother's hands painting, tucked under a cracked mirror. One night, Nora whispered, "Why do you stay?" Axel blinked slowly, didn't move. But in his stillness, she felt something shift. A question returned unspoken. "Why do you?" The knock came just after dusk. Nora hadn't had visitors in months. She froze, teacup halfway to her lips. Outside, Axel lifted his head. Ears forward, still, another knock. Then a voice low, uncertain, too familiar to ignore. "Nora, it's me, David." Her heart stopped. David, her mother's brother, the man she hadn't seen since the funeral. The man who had begged her to let go, to come back to the city, to accept help. She hadn't answered his calls, hadn't responded to his letters. And yet here he was. She opened the door an inch. David stood in the falling snow, hands in his coat pockets, eyes sunken. "You look tired," he said. "You look lost," she replied. Behind her, Axel appeared. No sound, no growl, just presence. David took a step back. "Is he yours?" Nora shook her head. "He's here." David hesitated, then pulled an envelope from his pocket. "They're selling the cabin." Nora blinked. "What? It was left to you, yes. But your mother had debts, quiet ones, hospital bills, legal things. Her lawyer's been trying to reach you." He placed the envelope on the porch. "You have 60 days. Then he left, no hug, no demand, just snow filling in his footsteps. Nora stood there for a long time. Axel didn't move. She picked up the envelope with a shaking hand. Her chest burned not from anger, but from dread. The one place that held her mother's memory. Her silence, her healing, could be gone. That night, Axel curled closer than usual, not touching. But close enough that when Nora finally cried, she didn't cry alone. The envelope sat on the table for 3 days. Nora didn't open it. She told herself she didn't care. That none of this mattered. That this place, this quiet, this cabin, this dog was temporary anyway. But her hands trembled whenever she passed it. Axel sensed the shift. He stayed closer. Walked with her through the woods. Sat beside her when she stared blankly into the fire. One night, while chopping wood, Nora slipped. A small misstep, a twisted ankle. Enough pain to bring her to her knees in the snow. She bit back a scream. And from the forest Axel came running. He didn't hesitate. He pressed his body against hers, letting her lean. Slowly, painfully, she made it back inside. Axel didn't leave her side that night. As she sat on the floor, leg wrapped in ice, eyes stinging, she reached for the envelope. And opened it. Debt notices, legal threats. A date circled in red, February 16th. She had 42 days. Nora stared at the flames. "She left me this place," she said quietly. "But she didn't tell me about the rest." Axel didn't move. Nora looked at him, tears threatening. "Do you think she meant to protect me? Or punish me?" Axel leaned his head into her lap. No bark, no sound, just presence, and somehow that hurt more than answers. That night, Nora took her mother's urn from the mantel, held it in her lap, and said, for the first time in months, "I'm still angry with you." Axel looked up. Nora exhaled. "But I think I'm ready to let go." The next morning, the woods felt different. Nora stepped outside, ankle bandaged, breath fogging the air. Axel was already waiting, sitting at the edge of the tree line. This time, when she moved toward him, he stood and walked, not fast, not forcing, just leading. She followed, deeper into the trees than she'd ever dared to go alone. The sun broke through the canopy in soft golden streaks. Birdsong threaded the silence. They passed the creek, the fallen birch, an old deer path. Then Axel stopped. Before them stood an ancient pine, thick with moss. At its base, half buried under leaves and stone, something caught her eye. Wood, weathered, hand-carved letters, barely visible now. "To breathe again, plant your grief," Nora knelt. Beneath the sign, in a shallow hollow, were bones. Not human, animal, wrapped in linen, carefully placed. She realized this was a grave. A burial site, maybe for another dog, maybe for a friend. Axel sat beside it, silent. Nora ran her fingers along the moss-covered bark, whispering, "Did you bring me here to show me how to let go?" Axel didn't blink. He just laid down, calm, knowing. Nora opened her backpack, inside her mother's urn. She had brought it without knowing why. Now, her hands moved instinctively. She dug slowly, gently next to the pine, placed the urn into the earth, trembled as the soil touched it. Then she whispered, through tears, "Goodbye, Mom." Axel leaned his head against her shoulder, and for the first time since the fire, since the silence, since the cabin, Nora wept, not from pain, but from release. Something old broke open inside her, and in its place, something soft took root. Peace, not loud, not complete, but real. The morning after the burial, Axel was gone. Not by the tree, not by the porch, not on the trail. Nora searched the woods, called his name once, twice, louder. Nothing. She told herself he'd return, that he was a wanderer, a drifter, a ghost who came and went. But something in her chest clenched. By dusk, the anxiety bloomed into panic. She lit the old lantern, put on her boots, and walked into the dark. She retraced every step, past the pine, the creek, the deer trail. No prints, no howl, no golden eyes in the dark. The forest, once her sanctuary, now felt endless. Hours passed. Snow began to fall. She collapsed beneath the old pine, breath heaving, hands raw. "You said you'd stay," she whispered to the dark. "You said," but he hadn't said anything. He had only been there, and now he wasn't. Nora curled in on herself. The grief was different this time, sharper. Not about death, but abandonment. She was 7 again, watching her mother disappear into surgery. 23 at the funeral, 34, staring at ashes she couldn't bury. She whispered through chattering teeth, "Please come back." Then a sound, not bark, not footsteps. Breathing, she turned. From the shadows Axel emerged, limping, mud on his side. A long cut across his flank, but alive. He limped to her, lay at her feet, and placed his head gently in her lap. Nora broke. "Where did you go?" No answer. But he looked up at her, not to apologize, not to explain, just to say, "You're stronger now. I knew you'd come," and she had. She hadn't waited for rescue. She had gone after him. That was the difference. She was no longer surviving in silence. She was moving toward life. Axel slept for nearly 2 days. Nora cleaned his wound, dressed it, and placed a soft blanket beside the fire. She didn't speak, didn't cry. Just moved with purpose, quiet, present. Exactly as he had once been for her. When he finally woke, he lifted his head slowly and looked at her. She smiled soft and tired. "You scared me, old boy." Axel blinked, then closed his eyes again. She sat beside him and ran her fingers through the rough fur along his neck. "I didn't realize how loud this cabin got until you weren't in it." That night, she cooked for 2, placed his bowl near the fire. He didn't eat much, but he stayed close. Later, she lit a candle and sat at the table. From the drawer, she pulled out an old notebook, her mother's. Pressed between the pages were hand-drawn sketches, poems, shopping lists, unfinished letters. Nora read one aloud. It was dated the winter before her mother died. "I am not afraid of death, only of leaving without planting one more thing." Nora looked toward the window. Snow falling softly outside. Axel raised his head. She whispered, "We planted something, didn't we?" He blinked, stretched, laid his head in her lap again, not because he was sick, not because he needed comfort, but because she did. She exhaled, long, full, like letting go of a breath held for years. Spring arrived without ceremony. One day, Nora woke to birdsong instead of wind. Moss crept up the stones outside. The snow melted in streaks across the porch. Axel was walking again slowly, but steady. He followed her as she planted seeds in the thawed garden bed. Tomatoes, lavender, sunflowers, just because. She always said sunflowers don't grow here, Nora told him, but I'm planting them anyway. He wagged his tail once. Approval, she decided. The cabin began to shift too. She scrubbed the windows, aired out the old linen closet, donated her mother's clothes to the local hospice, but she kept the painting brushes. One evening, she stood in front of a blank canvas and whispered, "Let's see if my hands remember." They did. Her strokes were slow, uncertain, but honest. Axel watched from the doorway, his yellow eyes steady. Every morning, she wrote in a journal. Some entries were only a line. The fog smelled like pine today. Others were pages long. I had a dream she was in the kitchen humming. I didn't cry when I woke up. Axel became more than company. He was rhythm, a beat to her quiet days, a reason to walk beyond the porch. She even began calling him by name when they were alone. "Come on, Axel. We're going to town today, Axel. I think she would have liked you, Axel. Double quotes. And he listened, not because he understood every word, but because he stayed. Nora no longer waited for the silence to consume her. Now she filled it, with the rhythm of her boots on damp soil, with the rustle of pages turned by morning light, with the hum of her voice, low and unpracticed, singing while she cooked. Axel was older now. He didn't run as far, didn't climb the porch stairs as quickly, but he still followed her, still laid his head in her lap when she sat with a book, still nudged her hand when she forgot to rest. One day, while packing up the attic, Nora found an old recorder. She dusted it off, pressed play. Her mother's voice crackled through the speaker. "To whoever hears this, I hope you're not still afraid of the world. I hope you've planted something." Nora sat on the floor and closed her eyes. She wasn't afraid anymore. Not of the memories, not of the silence, not of the next chapter. She stepped outside, breathing in the scent of thawed earth and pine. Axel was waiting. She knelt beside him, pressed her forehead to his. "You found me when I didn't even know I was missing." Axel didn't move, didn't blink. He just leaned in. Later that week, she mailed a letter. Her first in 2 years, to David, the uncle she had turned away. "I'm not running anymore. You were right, I was lost. But I'm not angry now, and I'd like to see you." She didn't expect a reply, but she sent it anyway, because sending it meant she had returned, to the world, to herself, to everything she thought she had buried with her mother. Not all stories are about being rescued. Some are about learning how to stop hiding, how to grieve without vanishing, how to sit in silence, not as punishment, but as presence. This is not a story about a dog saving a woman. It's a story about a woman finally choosing to live, because a dog refused to walk away. Axel never gave her answers. He never filled the space with noise. He just waited. And in that waiting, Nora found something she didn't know she needed. Stillness, companionship, a reminder that she was still here. Alive, wounded, yes, but healing. This is for the ones who plant their grief in frozen soil, and hope it blooms, for those who find love not in loud declarations, but in fur and footsteps and steady eyes that say, "I see you, I'll stay." Because sometimes, staying is the loudest kind of love there is. If this story found something quiet inside you, something you hadn't named or had long buried, don't let it end here. Like this video if you've ever found healing in silence. Share it with someone who might need reminding that grief doesn't mean disappearance. Subscribe for more true stories about second chances, quiet love, and the animals who help us return to ourselves. And in the comments, tell us about your Axel, the one who stayed, the one who walked beside you, not to fix you, but to remind you that you were never alone. Because someone out there is still sitting in their silence, still waiting for proof that love doesn't have to be loud to be real. Let this story be their proof. And remember, not all rescues have leashes. Some arrive quietly, some wait at the porch, and some never leave.